estamos aquí en Chicago, sabadito lindo. Miren, un clima agradable. Aquí voy a presentarles aquí por el centro de Chicago. Estamos aquí por la calle Michigan. Hoy es, creo que sábado 21 de mayo. Ya ni sé ni qué día, pero es sábado. Y aquí les estoy mostrando, miren. Aquí andamos aquí en Chicago, mis amigos. Venimos a darnos una vuelta. Ya les digo, y quiero hacerles una pequeña grabación, miren. Ya les digo. Miren. Así que espero y les guste este video. Acuérdate que mi canal se llama Paisano Yo Soy. Comenta cómo te pareció este video. Si quieres mandar un saludo, tú nomás dime de qué parte nos escuchas, de qué parte nos miras, perdón. Si quieres mandar un saludo. Ya tenía tiempo que no les bajaba un video, así que les estoy bajando este video, miren. Estamos en el centro de Chicago, así que espero y les guste este video. Así que ya les digo, mis amigos, aquí andamos, miren. Chicago, bonito día, porque los días pasados nos tocó muy frío, estaba frío. Hoy está un clima más o menos agradable, ni frío ni caliente, está así, pero está muy agradable. Allá ahorita que veníamos de Goshen estaba lloviendo, para allá todo anunciado agua todo el día, y aquí no, miren, asoleado. Ya les digo. Así es, mis amigos, aquí estamos aquí en el mero centro de Chicago, miren el frijolito, el famoso frijolito aquí de Chicago, miren. Así es, miren. Tocó un día bien bonito, ni frío ni caliente, está al puro como debe de estar, ni frío ni caliente. Ya les digo, miren. Aquí hay de toda la gente, de todos los países. Así es, mis amigos, mira. Ya les digo, mira. Aquí para sacar la foto del recuerdo aquí, mis amigos. Así es. Ya les digo. Así que ya les digo, miren. Espero les guste este video, así que comparte y dale like. Acuérdate que soy Paisano Yo Soy. Manda un saludo desde donde nos miras. Así es. Mira, mucha gente ahora tuvo graduación. Así es. Así que espero y te guste este video. Saludos así de donde quiera que nos mires. Espero y te guste este videito. Tratando de compartir aquí. Nos dejamos de nuevo para Chicago. Mira, Un bonito día. Así es. En la mañana estaba nublado. Ya les digo. Así que espero les guste este video, mira. Son los de la graduación, mira. Mucha gente, mis amigos, aquí estamos en el centro. Les estoy haciendo una grabación de pedacitos porque todo el camino así está. Ya les digo, mis amigos, estamos aquí en el centro, en el downtown Chicago. Así es. Así que amigos, miren, aquí les dejo, vamos a hacer el recorrido aquí en el barco, miren. Acuérdense que estamos en el centro de Chicago. Ahí está la torre de Trump. Así es, mis amigos. Estamos en el este, mis amigos, miren. Ahorita nos vamos a subir allá arriba, mis amigos. Está ahorita comprando los boletos. Ya les digo, espero que les guste este video, mis amigos. Acuérdense que mi canal es Paisano, yo soy. Espero que les guste este video. Comparte, dale like, comenta. Y suscríbete al canal, mi amigo. Y dile de dónde nos miras, ¿ok?
Look at several contemporary buildings as we go along. Now let's look off the left side of the boat. We're looking at this stone-colored building with a curved front. Looks like it has a dome on top. This is London House Chicago, completed in 1923, designed by Alfred L. Schuler. Today it's a very nice hotel called London House Chicago, but its original purpose was the headquarters of the London Guarantee and Accident House, which was an insurance company. And what they insured was boats and goods coming into Chicago's port. So the way the building is oriented to the river with that curved front is so that all these ships coming into the river could see, hey, there's my insurance company. I feel like they're in good hands. And as we come out from the bridge, if you look about a third of the way up the building, you'll notice a griffin or flying lion. This is the logo of the London Guarantee and Accident House. But that shallow sculpture, that bas relief, we see a lot of that in the Beaux-Arts style. That dome on top is called the Belvedere. It's French for beautiful view. And you can get a beautiful view from that spot in the building. It's now home to a rooftop bar at London House, so London House rooftop. Today would be an excellent day with all this fog burning off to get some great views down the river. About 2 buildings past that, also on the left, there's a honey-colored building. It looks like it has a temple on top with 4 smaller temples around it. This is 35 East Wacker, also known as the Jewelers Building, completed in 1926, designed by Weber and Dinkelberg. So it's called the Jewelers Building because the original developer had this idea that he could draw tenants from nearby Wabash Avenue, which has been our historic jewelers district. He could draw them from Wabash Avenue into the building, and so he included a special feature in order to do that. It was a car-sized elevator. So 1926 in Chicago is not a great time to be walking around the streets with jewels and precious metals. This is the era of Al Capone and Chicago the Musical. We're pretty rough and tumble crowd. So the car-sized elevator is supposed to let those jewelers drive right into the building, take the elevator up to their office floor, and they don't have to interact with the streets of Chicago at all. And that worked for a little bit. Unfortunately, by the 1940s, the cars had gotten so big that the elevators were somewhat obsolete, and the jewelers kind of hung out on Wabash. They're still there today, so never really quite drew that crowd. But today it is an office building. Those elevators have been converted to additional office space. That kind of temple shaped on top was for many years a nightclub called the Stratosphere Lounge. And those smaller temples around it are cleverly disguised water towers. So those are used as part of the fire suppression for the building, which we'll find out as we go on. Fire suppression in Chicago is a major focus of our architecture and engineering. So we'll look at some ways that architects include that in their design. So about 3 buildings past this bridge, we're looking at a tall gray building with metallic accents in all of the windows. This is the most creative building in Chicago, and that's because it is home to the Leo Burnett Advertising Agency. But this is yet another architectural style known as postmodernism. So the modernists said less is more. The postmodernists said less is a bore. Let's bring back some of those historical architecture shapes, but let's have a little fun with it. So they again start remixing these Greek and Roman temple elements, but this time at a scale that shows there's no way they could be supporting the structure of the building. So as we look at the Leo Burnett building off the left side of the boat, it's actually designed to look like one big column, like you might see on a Greco-Roman temple. And if you look about a third of the way up the building, you'll notice that kind of column motif repeats again. That is loosely aligned with the rooftop of 55 West Wacker, so it's kind of talking to its neighbor. It's something we call contextualism. So all postmodern buildings are contextual, whereas modernist buildings can go anywhere. Postmodern buildings are always talking to the environment around them, which we'll see plenty of examples of as we go along. But let's look 2 buildings past the bridge, just past 55 West Wacker. This glass building with white vertical elements. This is yet another postmodern building. Here, as we get up close, you'll see those white vertical elements are actually designed to look like teeny tiny columns, so small that they couldn't possibly be supporting the rest of the building. That triangle or pyramid on top of this building is called a pediment. Again, something you would see in a Greek or Roman temple. So you're kind of getting this idea of a temple that's just been stretched out to modern proportions. Chicagoans have taken to calling this building Parthenon on a stick because it is so kind of tall and narrow. So 2 buildings past the bridge, also on the left side, is a tall tan tower. It's looks like it has two alarms sticking out the side of it. This is yet another architectural style known as Art Deco. It only really thrives in Chicago from about 1925 to 1932, but it's all about the spirit of optimism. People are feeling really good coming out of World War I. For a while during that time period, the stock market looks really good. So we start to see this kind of, that things are looking up. That's the spirit of the day. And we see that in the architecture too, something we call verticality. The building draws your eyes to the top. So on 35 West Wacker here, or excuse me, LaSalle Wacker building, with the giant American flag just above the entrance, it's achieving that effect of making your eyes look up by having very thin, tall windows with a darker piece called a spandrel underneath, and they're inset into the facade of the building, so it almost creates like a pinstripe effect. The other characteristic of Art Deco that we see specifically in Chicago are these buildings that look like chairs or thrones or couches in some instances. And that's because we changed the zoning in the 1920s to allow architects and engineers to build taller, but the trade-off for doing that was you had to provide setbacks or step-backs on the building to allow light and air down to the street below. And so the way many architects dealt with this is by just kind of creating these little shorter bases of the building or tower shapes that have become kind of synonymous with Art Deco in Chicago. Now you may notice our river walk, especially off the left side of the boat. This portion from the confluence to Michigan Avenue was designed between 2014. We're doing a major redevelopment along the Chicago River. You have to provide some space for a public park, so we're sort of creating a giant linear park in the city, which helps date some of the redevelopment as we go along. Immediately to our left is 225 West Wacker. It's this tan building that looks like it has two toothpicks sticking out the top. This dates to 1990, designed by KPF. Also an example of postmodernism. So if you look up to the top of the building, you can see it has two little bridge houses on the front, and even a little bridge that connects them. So this building is telling you that it could be nowhere else but on the Chicago River, where our bridge houses are part of our scenery.
And I say, wherever you live on the planet Earth, support the public.
Also on the left, this green curved building is 333 West Wacker, sometimes called the New Bean Building. It dates back to 1983, designed by KPF. It is consistently named one of the most beautiful buildings in Chicago, and that's because it is a very good neighbor. As we start to come past the glass, you'll notice that it does a pretty good job of reflecting the neighboring buildings in true form. So that green of the glass is reflecting the green of the Chicago River. That's before we dye green for St. Patrick's Day. The curve of the building is reflecting the curve of the river on this area. So it's so contextual, we just call this building contextualist. Now you may notice these yellow tracks that look like they run right into the bottom of the building. That's where our elevated train runs. And in 1983, we did not have the technology to create acoustical glass that would block noise and vibration. So rather than subject the office workers in this building to the rumble of the train every few minutes, the architects did them a favor, and they actually raised the office space a few floors. So you'll notice where all this pink gray granite is on the bottom, that's where all the mechanicals of the building are, so that the offices could sit on top. Immediately in front of us, as we come into the confluence of the three branches of the river, is River Point, completed in 2017, designed by Picard Chilton. That's that building with the arch on top and on the bottom. So this is yet another contextual building, and one of the things, contemporary. One of the things we know with contemporary buildings is that they're trying to solve some sustainability challenges. So most modern buildings are trying to be more energy efficient, create more recycling programs. This building is LEED certified platinum. LEED stands for Leadership in Energy and Environmental Design. It's the award given to new and existing buildings that take steps to improve their sustainability. One of the reasons River Point gets this designation is that arch on the bottom there is collecting rainwater. So it collects rainwater that is then used to water the public park that is in front of it. Just ahead on our left, we're looking at the pink brick building. This is the oldest building we'll see on our tour. This is Fulton House, which dates to 1898. It was originally used as a cold storage warehouse. So late 1800s, we don't really have refrigeration. So to insulate this building, they made the walls super thick. You can see just how thick if you look to those balconies and some of the windows. So very thick walls, and then just packed it with insulation, which was mostly cork and horsehair. It took 500 semi-trailers to remove all that insulation, and 18 months to thaw this building out in the 1980s when they went to convert it to residences. The conversion was done by a Chicago-based architect named Harry Weiss. And you'll notice these kind of star details on the side of the building. When they punched out all those windows and balconies, because you don't need those in a cold storage warehouse, the actual structure of the building was a little question our dirty water problem. The very first thing he did was create a sewage system, which required lifting many of the buildings downtown on a number of jacks, raising them several feet in the air so that we could put pipes underneath the buildings, the roadways, and the sidewalks. So pretty major engineering project, and that at least collected a lot of our waste in one place, but it was still sending it into the Chicago River, which was still flowing into Lake Michigan. So the second thing Ellis Chesborough and his team did was they decided they would come up with a cribbage system. So you may have seen on our lakefront, if you're looking out into the lake, they look almost like giant circus tents, these circular structures. Those are called cribs, and their purpose is to pump fresh water from further out in the lake into the city. Now that was also a pretty major engineering project, so we had to dig 60 feet underground, about 18 meters, starting in the city and out 2 miles, or 25 in total on our tour, and we'll go under them twice. Might be 24 now that Chicago Avenue is gone. Chicago is home to more movable bridges than any other city in the world other than Amsterdam. The prevailing style of bridge in the city is called a trunnion bascule bridge. So trunnion just means hinge or pivot point. Bascule is the French word for seesaw. So these bridges open by operating on a hinge and kind of seesawing into the sky. Most of them that we see are double trunnion, so they'll open like French doors or a book. But if you look straight ahead, you'll see a single trunnion bascule bridge that is almost always in the upright position. This is the Kinzie Street Railroad Bridge, completed in 1908, designed by Joseph Strauss, who would go on to engineer the Golden Gate Bridge. But this is a great example of how those trunnion bascule bridges work. So as we come past it, you'll be able to see the counterweight behind it that holds that bridge upright. It stays upright because it's cheaper to keep it upright and keep it here than disassemble it. But it is too low to the ground to be functional. But about once a year they do lower it, run a special railroad truck on top of it so it can stay certified, and they put it back up. But where that fading yellow block is off behind the bridge, that is the counterweight, and that's the way these bridges work. The bridge weight has to stay in exact alignment with that counterweight, so they use very little horsepower on the motors to open them. If you have a little time to kill today, the Bridge House Museum is open and free just on the other side of Michigan Avenue from where you boarded today. So it's really cool to check out the gears, the weights, and how all these bridges operate. As we come back to the confluence, you're about to get a great view of Chicago's skyline off the left side of the boat. So I'll take the briefest of breaks so you can take your photos. Fog really is a paid actor today. Makes for some dramatic pictures. Immediately on our right is a glass building that comes down almost to a point. It's like a martini glass. This is 150 North Riverside, completed in 2017 by Getch Partners. It's on an area of land that was thought to be unbuildable for more than 100 years. That's because it's hemmed in by the river and active railroad tracks on two sides. So this building is very narrow for its height. In fact, it's about twice as high as it should be according to normal engineering standards. So we'll talk about how the engineers achieved this when we're coming back and we get a second look at this building. But for now, just know that all tall buildings move, whether you want to think about that or not. If they didn't move in the wind, they would just fall over. So the trick is to get them to move enough so that they remain stable and upright, but not so much that the people inside can feel that sway from the wind. On our left is another glass tower designed by Getch Partners. This one completed in 2020. This is Bank of America Tower. You'll notice it has some unusual pillars on the bottom. They look like a trident or chicken feet, these steel beams. That's because the partners at Getch said that the way the building meets the ground is as important as the way it meets the sky. And they knew most people would be seeing this building from the west across the river, so they included this trident shape as sort of a reference to the water. It also leaves a nice open river walk, so you get nice open space rather than that glass curtain wall coming all the way to the ground, which would be very different. German architect who emigrated to the Chicago area because he got to keep his commercial practice. He designed the Architecture Center at the Illinois Institute of Technology, and he taught more than a generation of architects. He was very important to the history of architecture in Chicago. Mies was all about Mies is designed to push the support for the buildings almost to the outside of the buildings. So it creates this wide open space in between or inside where you can put walls everywhere you want them and not where you need them. You don't really need them anyway. There's an ideal known as universal space. It's one of the things the modernists were after, just to make space really functional for the people within it, and sometimes call that volume or mass over volume. So you can see this kind of dark palette was also pretty characteristic of Mies's designs. The next building, this white building, is Fifth Third Center off the right side of the boat. This is also a modernist building. We start to get away from that Miesian color palette. This is actually an example of a tubular structure. So inside there's a concrete core that holds all the elevators and mechanicals. That acts as almost the spine of the building, and then the concrete on the exterior acts as the muscle. This was also designed by SOM, getting into the 1970s. So still modernist, but we're starting to see some different a reflection of the buildings as they might appear in the water, so very contextual. This building is also home to the Climate Action Museum, whose mission is to help people and businesses discover ways, big and small, that they can reduce their carbon footprint. The built environment, that's businesses and infrastructure, are responsible for more than 40% of all carbon emissions in the world, which means architects, engineers, designers, developers all play an important role in reducing those emissions. So a great place to duck inside. Immediately on our right, this behemoth building is the old post office. The first part was completed in 1921. The majority of it was completed in 1934. And for 60 years, it was the largest post office building in the world. In fact, it replaced about 14 other smaller post office in Chicago when it was completed. But its downfall that it was built before automation. So all of those mail order catalogs, Chicago was managing millions of pieces of mail every year. But it was all sorted by hand, so it made it very costly. It was kind of slow. When it was replaced by an automated post office, which is just further down on your right here, you can see how small it is compared to the scale of that old post office. The old post office, very little of that building touches the ground. You notice we went under a very noisy highway that actually runs right underneath the building. The building was completed before the highway, but they knew it was coming. It was part of that 1909 plan. They thought it was important to have that connection to the interstate highway system or what would become the interstate highway system to move mail. Most of the building also sits over active railroad tracks. So a few years ago, after sitting vacant for about 2 days, so here that includes a 70s slip marina that is aerated all year long so the water doesn't freeze. There's an education center, lots of retail, even a winding road that Bertrand described as a winding street in Paris, so a little bit of an atrium effect inside. So this is split back and forth between apartments and condominiums, units that you rent versus units that you own over the years. It came into some controversy a few years ago when a new developer took over and they painted that winding road, all the walls, like blinding white rather than this raw concrete that we're looking at. Many people thought it ruined the kind of character of the building, but there it remains. So some folks will refer to this style as brutalist. It's kind of a subset of modernism. It's not called brutalist because of how brutal the buildings are in 1871. It had been a very hot, dry summer. We were officially in drought conditions. And October 8th itself was a very warm and windy night. Unfortunately, when Chicago had all this population growth in the mid-1800s, we used the materials that were kind of cheap and easy to get, which was mostly wood. Houses, barns, sidewalks, streets, even our water pipes in some instances were made out of wood, which were in plentiful supply from our neighbors north in Wisconsin. But all of that wood in those hot, dry conditions effectively became kindling. So we had a pretty sophisticated fire department. We had trained firefighters. We had a call system so the firefighters would know where to go. But it was simple human error, just calling that fire to the wrong location that caused a relatively small barn fire to rage into an inferno. There was a very strong wind coming out of the southwest that evening, and so the fire started pushing towards the downtown. First it encountered the river, which was so polluted that it did nothing to stop the spread of the fire. And people had gathered downtown where most of the buildings at the time were only 3 or 5 stories tall, kind of watched the fires. The railroads were left unscathed because they were further west than when the fire started. So the rebuilding effort began the very next week. And now Chicago is attracting not just workers and laborers, but architects and engineers who saw a blank slate on which to rebuild the city. And it would be just 100 years later that we would go on to build the tallest building in the world, that tall black tower with the white antenna directly in front of us. This is the Willis Tower, which any Chicagoan will tell you is pronounced Sears. It was completed in 1974, also designed by SOM, Bruce Graham, and a structural engineer by the name of Fazlur Khan. They had sort of a legendary partnership, which I'll tell you a little bit about. So Sears Tower, Willis Tower is in the modernist style. It is a bundled tube construction, so think if you had a single pencil on its own, it's pretty easy to blow over, bend it, break it. But if you take 9 pencils and bundle them together, they have a lot of strength. It's the exact idea that goes into the Sears Tower. Now, whether that was Bruce Graham as a smoker describing this with cigarettes, which I sometimes hear, or Fazlur Khan's engineering prowess is up to you to decide. But so what happens is they bundle these two together. They're literally a steel belt around these individual towers. And they don't all go up to the full 110 stories. They start dropping off after about the 44th floor. So that helps wind move around the building so it's not so susceptible to those high wind speeds. There are 16,000 identical windows in the Sears Tower. It was the tallest building in the world for about 25 years, although today I think it's just out of the top 25. It's half the size of the Burj Khalifa, which is the current tallest building in the world, which was designed by Adrian Smith, also previously. But it wasn't just new buildings, even existing buildings had to find a way to stand out. So this modernist building kind of right next to us off the right side of the boat, when it was redeveloped in the early 2000s, they opted to put a map on the side of their building to kind of help it stand apart. And they included that map as a mural of the Chicago River system. So that red dot is you are here. But if you are here and you are lost, you should pull out your phone and pull up Google Maps, because this map is not a very good indication of where you are. It's facing the wrong direction for one. It's not really to scale. But they tried. You may notice all our train tracks kind of at eye level off the left side of the boat. And if you look up just a little bit, you'll see the sign for Union Station. So Union Station dates back to 1925, and it is, Union is named for the union of all the railroad companies that came together. It's actually part of Daniel Burnham's 1909 plan. He didn't want people to come to Chicago and have to make the confusing station transfer. He thought that was too much to ask for visitors or people just moving through the town. So he wanted to bring everything together in one space, and Union Station is the result. There's 10 city blocks of railroad tracks underneath the station, and Chicago is still, more railroad emanates from Chicago than any other city in North America. We have lots of freight lines, lots of commuter lines. Even at Union Station, 140,000 support to the other three columns. So if you go in that building and go to use the elevators, you actually have to take an escalator up because there's nowhere to put the elevator banks underneath. So pretty sophisticated engineering to get this building completed. They left the trellis work exposed because it's the same engineering that holds our bridges in place. So again, it's just sort of referencing its place here on the Chicago River. Almost immediately on our left, this tall tan tower. This 2 North Riverside Plaza began life as the Chicago Daily News building. Chicago Daily News was sort of a younger, more progressive paper. This is yet another Art Deco design. You'll notice that there's a wide open plaza in front of that tower. So partially so they could avoid building a tower on top of active railroad tracks. That's also just a nice design. It's still one of the first instances of having a private tower and a public plaza together. So thousands of Chicagoans traverse this every day to get to Ogilvy, which is our main commuting station. So you can see some of the Art Deco details here. The building is in a little need of a power wash, which they're working on. But kind of right underneath the clocks, you'll see kind of a face, again, that make those office workers sick. They had to include something called a mass-tuned liquid damper. Think of it as a giant dirty water pool at the top of that building. The physics principle behind it is that the wind hits the building, the water sloshes back in the opposite direction, helps stabilize the building faster than other methods, and also keeps it from going wildly out of whack. It's kind of like if you kicked a bucket of water, somehow the bottom of your leg would end up wet. So it's just kind of referring that wind sway. But the architects and engineers did a solid to those office workers. It's loud. They put in a higher rated liquid damper, so thousands of pounds of water. But when you use a liquid damper in Chicago, we like them because it helps. You can use it as part of your fire suppression system. You can just release the bottom and put out a fire if you need to do that. But you also have to make sure that the levels stay relatively even so that they work properly. So they just drill a little hole in the side, like a little window, to keep an eye on those levels. They also have to keep them heated so the pools don't freeze in the winter. Immediately on our left, there's another tan Art Deco behemoth. This is the Mart, which began as the Merchandise Mart. 1930, Graham Anderson, Probst, and White. This was the brainchild of Marshall Field, who wanted a wholesale warehouse where other retailers could look for goods to put in their retail stores. Unfortunately, in 1930, not a lot of people were doing a lot of shopping because the economy was not doing so great. So this building sat mostly vacant for much of its existence. It was adaptively reused just not too long ago. Today it is primarily office space, a lot of incubators, healthcare tech, other high-tech incubators. There's also some beautiful Art Deco murals inside if you have a chance to stop in. So you can see the Art Deco detail on the outside. Again, those thin, narrow windows that are taller than they are wide. Also a lot of metallic accents, again just referencing that Egyptian influence that we start to see in design. You'll notice our little, I call them our Pez dispenser collection in front of the building, a bunch of heads on sticks that are looking away from us. These are great men of retail history, but they have their back to us because they always keep their eye on the store. The Mart is also home to Art on the Mart, which is the largest digital art projection in the world. Now that we're in full-on summer, it should be happening every evening after sunset. So you can gather on the Riverwalk and look across it's like moving art, music, very cool and free. looking off the right side of the boat, but ahead in the distance, off the river, looking for a dark green tower with a shiny gold top. Oh, in the mist. This is the Carbide and Carbon building, completed in 1929, designed by the Burnham brothers. Those are the sons of Daniel Burnham. It began life as a regional headquarters for the Carbide and Carbon Company, hence the name. They were kind of an early petrochemical company, designed a dry cell battery. Now we know from the architect's notes that they were inspired by the color of a vintage champagne bottle. So that green of the building, it's a terracotta tile, kind of like a clay product, is referencing the green of a champagne bottle. And that unmistakable gold top is like the foil at the top of the champagne bottle. That is real 24 karat gold. It is only about the width of a human hair. Recently renovated and updated, so it is as sparkly as ever. But the overall shape of the building, which kind of looks, many people see a champagne bottle, whether that was by design or just a result of that 1920 zoning, is open to interpretation. Today, this office space has been adaptively reused as a hotel pendry. They also have a lovely rooftop bar called Chateau Carbide, which is on the 30th floor. So they specialize in magnum bottles of wine, so you can drink a lot of champagne while admiring that champagne coloring on a beautiful day like today. Just ahead on your left, you'll see another round building. It's one of two towers. The second one should come into view. These are Marina City, also designed by Bertrand Goldberg. So again, that idea of a city within a city. When these were completed between 1962 and 1967, this area of the city, especially to the north off the left side of the boat, is still pretty industrial, kind of run down, not really a place you want it to be. So this, unlike the previous River City, this was designed for the single set. Lots of studios, 1 and 2 bedrooms. It was a lot of firsts. It was one of the first kind of mixed-use developments in the city because it had all of these amenities like an ice skating rink, a grocery store, a movie theater, many of which have been replaced today. But it's still a very hot residential property in the city. Folks who live there love it. There's a wait list years long for 2-bedroom units. And there's a new movement to kind of restore these to their 1960s glory. So one of the features of this building originally was it was all electric because GE supplied all of the appliances and for that trade-off. So you can imagine those avocado green 1960s kitchens, some of which have been preserved. So we move from the student to the master. Bertrand Goldberg, the next building is this Miesian modernism. It's the only Mies van der Rohe designed building we'll see on the tour. This kind of tall black tower. Today it's AMA Plaza. It began life as the IBM headquarters. So because it was for IBM, they needed a lot of technological components in it, which is not something that Mies was really known for. He kind of got what he gave you. But IBM was very concerned about the heat that these massive computers in 1971 threw off. We're talking about floor-sized computers, so they needed a way to capture that heat and recycle it to use in the building when it got a little colder. It also included, so they came up with this recycling that also drew heat from the people in the building and would deploy it when it was needed. They also came up with a weather station at the top of the building that can talk to all the mechanicals inside. So in 1971, that was a very advanced concept. Today we would call that a smart building. Still something relatively cutting edge for new office buildings. Today this is also adaptively reused as a hotel, Millennium. Modernized and hotels are so amazing. So we get our first look at Trump International Hotel and Tower on the left. I will talk about this building last because I think it has some interesting connection to architecture, past, present, and future, not just in Chicago but around the world. 2009, designed by Adrian Smith, who is a starchitect by any measure. But you'll notice that these storefronts that are closest to the river are not leased out. These are some of the longest open retail space in the city. They have never been occupied. So it's a good example of great design does not always equal great function. You see they're relatively low ceilings. They have a lot of ductwork running through them. They're also just on part of the Riverwalk that is not as populated as other areas. So there has been a renewed effort since last year to get those leased out. You'll notice the big prime retail available signs, but we'll see if anything moves in. Ahead on our left, just past the bridge, it's a tall tan tower. It looks like it's wearing a crown. It's also flying a giant American flag on top. This is Tribune Tower. This is Tribune Tower Residences, completed in 1925. It was originally the headquarters for the Chicago Tribune. Colonel McCormick, who's the publisher for the Tribune, wanted to design the most beautiful office building in the world for his new headquarters. And to do that, he put out a call for entries. It was a contest with a cash prize of about $1 million that anybody could enter. Although he did go out to his friends, John Howell and Raymond Hood, who were students together at the Beaux-Arts School in Paris. They had the winning design. They also had the inside track that Colonel McCormick really liked French Gothic cathedrals. So what they gave him was a pretty modern office tower with the French Gothic cathedral on top. The next building is another tall tan tower off the left side of the boat. You can just see a white spire and the NBC logo on the front. This is NBC Tower, completed in 1990, also designed by Adrian Smith. So it's referencing both Tribune Tower with the flying buttresses, those little arm-like pieces that come out and over. They're help holding up the building on Tribune Tower. It also references 30 Rockefeller Center, which is NBC's global headquarters in Manhattan, really an Art Deco masterpiece, which was designed by Raymond Hood, so same architect as Tribune Tower. So I'd like to think of Adrian Smith kind of calling out to Raymond Hood in two ways here. He prefers to think of this building not as postmodern, but as historically referenced, so there you go. Off the right side of the boat is the older part of the Riverwalk, which is under a bit of a renaissance. So originally it was included as part of our sanitation and sewage canal, so it had a lot of municipal signage about all the great work we did to build our sewage system and clean up our water. We're really proud of it, you guys. We spent more than any other city on the planet before 2000 to clean up our river, so we have a lot of pride for that. Although now it's being kind of turned over into more recreational use, lots of new restaurants. It plays an important part of connecting the more open, kind of natural lakefront with the emerging recreational river walk. Off the left side of the boat, sort of, you can see a crane in the mist there in the clouds. This will be a new residential tower completed, I believe, next, or maybe this year, next year, very soon. This is 400 Lakeshore, which is one of the newer residential towers being built. It will be joined by a sister tower to the south once this is completed. It's going up very quickly, so it's a concrete core building, all glass. I think they're completing about a floor a day last summer. When those towers are completed, they're going to kind of lean towards each other, forming a little bit of an archway, sort of a new entrance to the Chicago skyline. So I don't know if you guys know the poem Fog by Carl Sandburg. Fog comes in on cat feet. Fog comes in on cat feet. I'm referring to my notes. The fog comes on little cat feet. It sits looking over harbor and city on silent conscience and then moves on. Carl Sandburg wrote that just a few blocks from where we are now. He wrote it from Grant Park about the fog in Chicago. So our weather has been delightfully, consistently inconsistent for over 110 years. So you're getting the quintessential Chicago weather experience. There's a better look at 400 Lakeshore. So going up pretty quickly, a whole other tower will join it. It'll have about 600 residential units, including a good chunk of that which will be affordable. It will also include a new public park. So we'll be continuing the Riverwalk on the north side of the river, the main branch of the river. And just past that, we'll also connect to the long proposed Jean-Baptiste Point de Sable Park, which was originally proposed and accepted by the city council in 1989, and nothing has happened since then. I think they approved new plans for it last year. It'll be just past Lakeshore Drive here. We'll include some history of Jean-Baptiste Point de Sable, have some of that prairie wetland and prairie kind of natural landscape. But we'll include, hopefully, a model of Jean-Baptiste homestead and what it might have looked at the new mouth of the Chicago River. After the fire, we pushed a lot of our landfill and debris into the lake, which created these neighborhoods that are east of Michigan Avenue. Michigan Avenue was named for Lake Michigan, not the state. It used to be what was closest to the lakefront. Developers of this building, Lake Point Tower, found a loophole, as developers are known to do. So the loophole was that you could build east of Lakeshore Drive, you could build out into the lake if you were doing harbor improvements, and it was on the mouth of the Chicago River. So that was the loophole they used to build this tower, that loophole has since been closed. That just guarantees that is the only building east of Lakeshore Drive in the city. It dates back to 1968 by the firm Shipperite and Heinrich. Truly home to a lot of Chicago celebrities. You get some incredible views of the city and the lake from this tower. It was also that city within a city idea when it was completed, since there's nothing else out here. You can't see the top of the building, so I won't talk about the restaurant that was there, but you had a lot of retail and dry cleaners. A lot of people will tell you Oprah lived here. She did not. She was just a frequent visitor of the restaurant, which unfortunately was closed during the pandemic, but has been in consideration for reopening. Also ahead on your left, you'll notice our big Ferris wheel. It's a centennial wheel celebrating 100 years of Navy Pier, completed in 1916. Navy Pier began life as Municipal Pier number 2, which should give you some idea of how much ship traffic was in the Chicago River and Lake Michigan. In fact, we even had a cruise ship there the other day. So Navy Pier has gone under many different uses over time. Originally just welcomed ships, people, goods to Chicago. During World War I, it was used to train technicians and officers. During World War II, it was used to train fighter pilots, and then it was eventually converted to classroom space for all those GIs coming back from World War II and going to college under the GI Bill. Since the 1990s, it has been Chicago's #1 entertainment district. There's something for everybody at Navy Pier. We've got restaurants, bars, hotels, a theater, a Shakespeare theater, a children's theater, so definitely worth checking out. I'm going to take a break because you're about to get most of a view of Chicago. Again, the fog is a paid actor, so I'll give you a minute to take your photos. Well, this is usually the part of the tour where I talk about the second, third, and fourth tallest building in Chicago, but they're a little hard to see right now. You've seen the tallest, that's Sears Tower, Willis Tower. The third tallest, if you look off the left side of the boat, you see it's a series of 3 kind of turquoise towers. They look very curvy. So a little hard to see the color, but you can kind of see the curve of the buildings. This is St. Regis Chicago, completed in 2020. So they're our pandemic tower. They were designed by Studio Gang, which is helmed by Genie Gang. Also a pretty famous architect working today. She is a daughter of Illinois. She is greatly inspired by the landscape of the Midwest and the natural world of the Midwest, which she carries through in all of her designs. This is the current tallest building designed by a female architect. Jeannie doesn't always like that designation because she doesn't like the female part, but very few architects even today are women, so we will shout it out. So St. Regis is a bit of an engineering marvel. It is 3 independent towers. The third tower, so they go tallest, tall, middle, small. The middle tower does not touch the ground at all. It is suspended between the largest and smallest tower by something called a spine wall. Think of it as like the rung on a ladder kind of braced in between these 2 other towers, all of which have concrete cores. But the reason that middle tower, Adrian Smith is previously worked for SOM, a Chicago-based firm. His office is still here. He now works for himself with his partner, Gil Gordon. He is the designer of the Burj Khalifa, the world's tallest building, and is the architect behind the future tallest building in Saudi Arabia, Jeddah Tower, which recently passed the 1 kilometer mark. So it is the first building, which is, 0.6 miles, I think I have that right. So incredibly tall. It's been under some tricky development in Saudi Arabia, financing right now. There's all sorts of political unrest. But I think it's important. Adrian Smith, worked in Chicago, worked for SOM. SOM was very closely tied to Mies van der Rohe. Many of the architects who worked there in the 50s and 60s have been educated by Mies. So we really see this connection in Chicago from our earliest architects to the mid-century to what's happening in design today and probably where it will go tomorrow. Adrian Smith also uses a lot of those engineering principles that were pioneered by Fazlur Khan. So Chicago is still, we may not be building the tallest buildings in the world, but we are still influencing the tallest buildings. And Chicago's adopted son, Mies van der Rohe, who said that architecture is the will of an epic translated to space. So Chicago's epic is still being written, whether you're here for a day or for generations, you have a chance to be a part of our story. Thank you guys so much for spending this time with me and putting up with our foggy weather. I do have a couple of favors to ask you before we hit the dock. The first is to please remain seated until we get the all clear from the captain. And if you've ever sailed or enjoyed boat life, docking is the hardest part, so we're going to give them a lot of grace to do that work. Also, will you please join me in giving a big round of applause for our captain and crew? They truly are the best in the business. They are what allows us to do what we do out here. They keep us safe and comfortable. We could not do it without them. Third, I hope you'll come and visit us at the Chicago Architecture Center. That's that Miesian building just across from the dock, just across Wacker Drive. I believe we're open until 7:30 today. We have some very cool exhibits, including a model of the city. You can see how the fire spread. We have a very cool model of Wrigley Field at the moment. And truly the best gift shop in the city. My entire coffee mug collection came from our design store, so definitely worth checking out. You do get reduced entry with your ticket today, so we also have a number of other tours you can take. If there's an architect, an architectural style, or a neighborhood you'd like to explore, we probably have something for you, so please come see us. And the fourth and final favor is I hope if you enjoyed the tour today that you will take the time to give me a review. If you took a brochure from me, there's a QR code that'll take you right to TripAdvisor. This is the most important part. I'm a volunteer. I don't get paid and I don't accept tips. But we do have a little friendly competition going to see who can get the most 5-star reviews among me and my 300 docent friends. We get together a couple times a year for bragging rights. So if you enjoyed the tour today, my name is Michelle P. If you didn't enjoy the tour, my name is Sally. Thank you guys so much for spending the time with me. I'll be on the dock. I'm happy to answer any questions. Make a lunch recommendation. Just come and say hi. Thank you again for spending the time with me, and I hope you enjoy your time in Chicago. tú.
Así que ya les digo, mis amigos, cómo se les ha hecho. Este video lo voy a hacer en varias partes. Lo voy a hacer en varias partes para que vean este video. Les estoy enseñando por Chicago, parte de Chicago, porque Chicago es muy grande. Y les voy a enseñar aquí parte de Chicago. Estamos en el centro. Así es. Vamos por la calle Wabash Avenue y la Lake. Calle Lake. Así es, mis amigos. Les estoy mostrando aquí parte de Chicago. Así que esperen, no se les haga aburrir este video. Hola mis amigos, buenos días, aquí estamos. Aquí venimos a esta tienda. Quiero hacerles una pequeña grabación en esta tiendita, miren. Una pequeña tienda que venimos de Chicago, vamos ahorita rumbo a la casa y quiero hacerles una pequeña grabación. Aquí ven todo lo que es de pesca, todo lo que es de cacería, todo lo que tú quieras, mira. Y quiero hacerles una pequeña grabación de este lugar. Aquí venden canoas, todo para el campo, miren. Y quiero hacerles esta pequeña grabación. Quiero hacerles una grabación allá adentro, miren. Quería hacerles una pequeña grabación, así que ahorita nos vemos allá adentro, mis amigos. Espero y les guste este video. Acuérdate que soy paisano, yo soy. Suscríbete a mi canal. Así que te voy a enseñar más cosas. Esto, miren, estamos aquí en la tienda. Como les digo, venden todo lo de cacería. Quería hacerles una pequeña grabación, miren. Aquí de esta tienda, aquí tienen maíz, miren. Semilla para los pájaros, para lo que sea. Así que sí, mis amigos, aquí estamos aquí en esta tienda, miren. Quería hacerles una grabación aquí de los pescaditos, miren. Mira. Los pescaditos aquí, miren. quería hacer esta pequeña grabación, miren. De esa tienda venden todo lo de red de cacería para ir a acampar. Si quieres una moto, ya están las motos. Yes, yeah, thank you. Mira, si quieres ir a cazar, lo que quieras, mira. Aquí te venden todo, lo que tú quieras aquí. Moto. Aquí está el elevador para subir para allá para arriba si quieres. Allá tienen otro segundo piso. Y ya les digo, todo aquí viene para ir para los barcos, lo que tú quieras. Ropa también, lo que quieras. Ya te digo, y como andábamos allá en Chicago, andamos viendo. Así es, mis amigos. Venden partes para barcos, venden barcos también. Miren sus chamarritas, están calientitas, son buena marca. Todo esto, mira, 139. Así es, mis amigos. Y les están haciendo esta pequeña grabación. Venden motos también, cuatrimotos. Todo, está grande esa tienda, mira. Venden asientos para los barcos. Asientitos, miren, todo parte. Si quieres unos asientos para tu barco, mira. Así es. Venden motores, venden todo. Así es. Y ya les digo, quería hacerles una pequeña demostración de esta tienda. Venden todo, tiendas, como les digo, venden de todo, llantas, miren, para todo. Así es. Así es, mis amigos. Así que quiero hacerles un pequeño recorrido. Así es. ¿Dónde vamos para allá? Miren, aquí está un alto. Es hermoso, miren. Aquí vienen, como les digo, motos, todo esto para el monte, mire, para divertirse. Ya les digo, aquí la que te gusta, mira. Aquí está una, es una 300. Mira, la que tú quieras, mira. Aquí está una 450, vale 7,799. Ya te digo, mira, allá en el campo, para que te traigas allá en el Sabinal, allá donde quiera que andes en el monte, mira. Así es. Esta es una 600, una tracker. Vale 8,000 y feria, ya les digo, ya están allá los barcos allá. Así es. Aquí ven lo que quieran, para ir a pescar para lo que quieran. Mira. Ya todos son lanchas, mira. Así es, mis amigos, miren. Aquí para el área de zapatos. Todo lo de cacería, miren. Para ir a cazar. Les digo que esta está grande, esta tienda. Miren. Está grande. Todo lo de cacería que está arriba. Abajo hay de pesca, todo este jale. Así es, mire. Así es. Ya les digo, aquí está todo, mire. Así es. Dice que le gusta la caseta, están los ríos, mire, los viniculares, esto es de Galia, mire. Mire. Están todos los animales, mire. Coyotes, todos de Galia. Lobos, yo no sé. Venados, pavos. Aquí están las cajas fuertes para guardar las armas. Guardar el billete, lo que tengan aquí, una caja fuerte. Así es. Ya les digo. Esta tienda está muy grande. Así es, mis amigos, está muy grande esta tienda. Vamos a ir a mostrarles esta tienda. Es una pequeña tienda. Vamos para que se den la idea. Miren. Ya les digo que estamos haciendo aquí. Así es. Todo lo que se trata de pescar, como le digan, lo que es de cacería, todo eso, pescar, todo, mis amigos. Así que espero y te guste este video, mi amigo, donde quiera que tú me veas. Acuérdate que soy paisano, yo soy. Si ves en mi canal, suscríbete, comenta, comparte, dale like. Así es. Y ya te digo, así que te estoy dando un pequeño viaje por aquí, mira. Así es. Así que miren, estos son mis carneros allá. No, mira. Una relación, miren, nos fuimos bien surtidas de todo, miren. Así es, mis amigos, aquí está todo lo de pescar, miren. Todo lo de pescar aquí, lo que el que quieras, mira. Para pescar, el que más te guste, mira. Aquí te das el gusto de escoger el que digas, este me gusta, el que sabe de pescar aquí, mira, ya sabe, es como el que compra rifles, ya sé, este está bueno. Mira, ahí tiene una pecera grande, mira. 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 Una pecera grande, mira. Y aquí está todo, miren, lo de pesca. Así es, así que ya salimos de la tienda, miren. Hasta camionetas también venden aquí, miren. Una Toyota. O el niño. Dile que vamos. Sí. Así que ya les digo. Ya vamos de salida. Así que espero. Y les gusta este video. Así que recuerda que soy, eso se llama Paisano, yo soy. Si te gusta este video, compártelo, comenta y suscríbete al canal, me vas a ayudar mucho. Sí, señor, así es, amigo. Y dime desde dónde nos miras. Así que saludos a todos y bendiciones a todos, ok. Así que les digo adiós y que estén bien, así que bendiciones.